"That movie scared me to death." How many times have you said this after exiting a theater? For a film fan, especially one who appreciates a healthy dose of pulse-pounding horror and/or good old-fashioned big-screen excitement, those words can be one of the highest compliments you can pay a movie, even if we never mean them literally at all. But the next time you say it, keep this in mind: you're lucky to be leaving the theater at all, because for some people, the final credits truly are final. It doesn't happen often, but it's true. Sometimes buying that ticket, stopping by the concession stand, and sitting down for a couple hours of seemingly innocent entertainment turns out to be some of the last things people ever do. With that scary fact in mind, here's a look at some movies that literally killed viewers in real life. Number 10. Avatar. James Cameron's 3D CGI epic Avatar marked a groundbreaking achievement in visual effects, but they unfortunately proved to be a little too stimulating for one poor soul in Taiwan. An unidentified 42-year-old man felt ill and left a showing of Avatar. By the time he reached the emergency room, he was unconscious from a severe stroke, and 11 days later he died. The man had a history of high blood pressure, and doctors blamed his death on overexcitement from watching the movie. We're honestly not sure whether that counts as a positive or negative review. Number 9. Aliens. Aliens isn't even the scariest entry in the franchise, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back for a student in India. After staying up all night to watch a horror movie marathon that also included blood, ghost, Prabhakar excused himself to use the restroom. He emerged screaming and collapsed from shock, dying shortly after. According to the Times of India, Prabhakar's collapse wasn't initially noticed by his fellow viewers, and by the time they tried resuscitating him, the movie marathon was over, and it was too late to save him. He was pronounced dead on arrival at a local hospital. Number 8. The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring franchise gains an extra queasy dollop of scariness, thanks to the fact that it's based on the allegedly real-life exploits of actual people, which has helped the two movies in the series scare up positive reviews and impressive box office receipts. But 2016's The Conjuring may second have been a little too scary for one viewer in India. According to a June 17, 2016 report published by the Times of India, an unidentified attendee at a screening in Tamil Nadu, the guy passed away during the movie's final act, and the story only gets weirder from there. The afflicted, described as a 65-year-old male, reportedly complained of chest pains during the film, and was taken to the hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead on arrival. His body was then remanded to another hospital for further examination, but it never arrived. As the Times put it, the driver disappeared with the deceased's body, prompting an investigation to determine the whereabouts and the identity of the dead man. Perhaps we'll hear more about the story in a Conjuring sequel a decade or two from now. Number 7. The Twilight Saga Eclipse. Sure, lots of people say they would rather die than watch Twilight, but how many people have actually done it? One that we know of, and it's really a sad story. 23-year-old Damien Smythe sneaked into a screening of the movie in Wellington and was found unresponsive when the lights came up, with an empty 1-liter bottle of whiskey on the floor. The coroner's findings were pretty much what you would expect, given the details. Smythe's death was attributed to acute alcohol toxicity, and described in the report as a sad, tragic loss of the life of a person so young. Smythe's father acknowledged his son's drinking problem, telling reporters he'd tried convincing him to enter rehab, to no avail. Number 6. The Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson's biblical epic was criticized by some viewers for excess gore and violence in depicting the death and resurrection of Jesus. Those critics may have had a point, given that 2 people are known to have died during screenings of the film. The first incident occurred in February 2004 during a screening in Wichita, Kansas, where 56-year-old Peggy Scott suffered a fatal heart attack during the movie's crucifixion scene, understatedly described by a spokesperson for a local TV station as the highest emotional part of the movie. A nurse who happened to be in the theater tried reviving Scott, but her efforts were unsuccessful, and Scott was pronounced dead after being taken to a nearby hospital. 1 month later, the same fate was suffered by Jose Soares, a 43-year-old Brazilian pastor who'd rented out a theater to watch the movie with his congregation. During the film, Soares' wife noticed he'd lost consciousness, as was the case with Peggy Scott's death. A medical professional happened to be in the theater, but they were unable to save Soares. Although some were quick to blame the film's violence for Soares' passing, a family friend disputed those allegations, retorting he was calmly watching the movie next to his wife. Number 5. Jaws. Steven Spielberg pioneered the summer blockbuster in 1975 with his thriller horror flick Jaws, starring Roy Schneider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, and a great white shark named Bruce. Until Spielberg's friend George Lucas released his space opera Star Wars in 1977, Jaws held the title of being the highest-grossing film of all time, earning over $470 million worldwide on an estimated $7 million production budget. All it took was a heart-pounding soundtrack, some blood, and a set of massive jaws to scare viewers out of the water for years to come, those who were lucky enough to make it out of the theater, that is. On September 9, 1975, a few months after Jaws arrived in theaters, 45-year-old Elmer Sommerfield attended a screening at Ford City Cinema in Chicago, Illinois, with his wife Marilyn. 45 minutes into the film, Sommerfield collapsed of a heart attack. Sommerfield's wife alerted the theater manager of the situation, and he called for an ambulance. In the meantime, 2 doctors in the audience administered CPR for 10 minutes until paramedics could arrive. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Sommerfield died on the way to the hospital, and the manager told the Chicago Tribune that he had never seen something like that happen during his 27 years working in movie theaters. Number 4, A Fish Called Wanda. Next time someone tries to convince you to watch the classic comedy A Fish Called Wanda, because you'll just die laughing, make sure they aren't actually trying to murder you. A Danish scientist really did die laughing while watching the movie in 1989, suffering a fatal heart attack brought on by laughing too hard at the scene where Kevin Kline shoves French fries up Michael Palin's nose. Funny, yes. Worth dying for? That's up for debate. Number 3. Raju Garigati. Life imitated art a little bit too realistically during a screening of the Indian horror comedy Raju Garigati, which tells the story of 7 reality TV show contestants trying to survive a night in a haunted house. The viewing experience turned out to be too much for one 55-year-old man who had a heart attack and died during a screening in Hyderabad. The patron, identified as Amarnatham from Telangana, India, reportedly headed for the exits twice during the film, only to turn around each time. When theater workers started clearing out the room after the lights went up, they discovered Amarnatham dead in his seat. It all makes for a rather tragic testimony to the spine-tingling power of the film, but as it turns out, there's a little more to the story. After investigators contacted Amarnatham's family to inform them of his death, they discovered he had a history of heart problems. In other words, as long as your own ticker's in good working condition, don't worry about scheduling your own viewing of Raju Garigati. Number 2, The Creeping Unknown. One of the earliest and arguably one of the most tragic instances of a viewer passing away while a movie occurred during a showing of the British import, The Quatermass Experiment, which told the story of an astronaut who returns to Earth infected with an alien parasite that threatens to destroy all life on the planet. Released in America in 1956 under the title The Creeping Unknown, the film entered the annals of horror history in November of that year when, according to a story reported in Variety and related in the 1997 book The Hammer Story, The Authorized History of Hammer Films, a 9-year-old boy suffered a ruptured artery and died during a screening in Illinois. Number 1, Freaks. Director Todd Browning's 1932 drama Freaks is widely regarded as a classic today, but it faced more than a little blowback during its initial release. Browning, who'd spent time in the circus as a youth, hired actual sideshow performers to bring life to the story of a circus midget. Freak's story was controversial enough for its day, but some accused the movie of exploiting its stars, while others were simply offended, and the studio, who'd hired Browning after his massive success directing Dracula, was left with a release that ended up being pulled from theaters, even after a series of edits intended to pacify the public. According to Don Sumner's book, Horror Movie Freak, the trouble with Freaks actually started even before the film arrived in theaters. One woman who attended a test screening allegedly threatened to sue the studio for causing her to suffer a miscarriage. An apocryphal story? Perhaps, but one that demonstrates how the line between cinema and reality has been blurred from the beginning. So that was it. Hit the subscribe button and share this video. See you soon.